You have to call it to order, and then I will call roll.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Patterson, super excited to call the meeting to order, and Councilor Perry will perform the roll call.
All right, I'll take a roll. William Newman.
Here.
Felicia Lundquist.
Present.
Garrett Perry, here. Jeremy Baker Paquette.
Present.
Marissa Elkins.
Here.
Marsha Morris.
Here.
Usman Power Green. Not here. Renika Montgomery Tomaclo. Not here. Sarah Lynn Patterson.
Present.
And Rachel Naismith.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Super excited, everybody, for today's meeting. Happy May. Welcome to summer as things in true form. Super happy to be here. We are going to start with public. Super happy to be here. We're going to start with public comment, and anyone who has questions from the audience, we have, it seems, about 10 people attending, and as well as some folks here in the audience, 5 of us. Jim Nash, I see your hand up, but I assume that you don't want to ask a question or public comment. Oh, Jim Nash. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Jim. Hi, Jim Nash. Hi, Jim Nash. You're acknowledged.
I just want to make a statement. I love you guys who are still doing this work, and I'm retired from council, but I'm back checking in tonight to see how things are going, and thank you for everything you do. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
And thank you, Jim. You've done a lot for us.
Keep going.
I'm sorry, I confused Jim Nash with Bill Newman just now. So, Jim, we're so excited to have heard from you.
I've been called a lot worse.
Are there any more comments from the public? Andrea Reber, you are acknowledged.
So it's green.
Which button?
It's on. Sorry. There you go. How's that?
It's on. Oh, okay. Yes, I'm a resident of Northampton, and I agree to thank you for your diligent work, really diligent, because I've attended a lot of your meetings. And I just wanted to report briefly that the documentary, The Cost of Inheritance, was shown. We showed it at the Unitarian Society right there about 2 weeks ago. And it was well attended, I thought. There were about 30 people in attendance.
Recording in progress.
And almost all of them were members of the public and not members of the UU congregation. So there was a lot of interest. And afterwards, there was a really active, we called it a Q&A, but it was really a discussion. You were there, Rachel. Yeah, and people had a lot of comments to make about the topic of reparations, and there was a lot of interest, and there wasn't any real opposition that I could put my finger on. So I think it was a great success. Just wanted you to know that the word is getting out. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. John Berkowitz, you are acknowledged.
Hi, John Berkowitz, also a member of the Northampton Reparations Committee, not commission, committee, just making that really clear. It's been such a beautiful day, and that's the glad tidings, but I really feel called to stand here and just briefly offer some sad tidings and tragic tidings, and to me, appalling tidings, but it's also why I got involved in racial justice issues and reparations issues with the committee, and still am. And I'm not even sure, because it hasn't been big news around the country, and I think it should be, but another black man by the name of Frank Tyson was killed by police officers in Canton, Ohio, I believe on April 18th, by a group of police officers after a nonviolent traffic accident that happened. And he was in a bar and brought down to the floor, and with a knee on his back, sounding it all familiar, died, an hour later. And I'm just saying that in case any commissioners hadn't heard about it, if anybody in the public hadn't heard about it, we all need to hear about it and know that that is why this commission's work is so important, why I support it, why I advocated for the resolution and now this commission, and that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? All right, I am seeing no more comments from the public. Thank you so much for a round of engagement. I do want to just follow up to say that we have changed our name to the Northampton Reparations Study Commission, and we will have all of our web spaces reflecting that, if not already, soon. So the first agenda item is revolving around commissioner reports and updates on progress. We're all focused on performing some sort of community service, some engagement, some research, and this is a space for all of us to share with the public some of our preliminary progress. Of course, our final report will be much more descriptive, but I do invite any of our commissioners to begin the reports. I could begin if no one else would like to go first, but I'd like to open the floor to any others.
So, no problem. Hey, can you let people in?
If I made the co-host, I can do that. But right now, Marissa is over letting people in.
There was only one person. I just let her in.
Marsha, I think everyone is in the room.
Yeah, Marissa, somebody called me because they couldn't get in. That's why I said, ask you. Thank you, Marissa.
Sorry, I moved away. I looked away from that screen for a second. Sorry.
So one of our goals has been to foster community response and engagement. We have quite a bit of that and have been having that. I know Jeremy, who is our representative from the Youth Commission, has been working with Marsha as well as Northampton High School to bring together a group of students. And we have a couple of questions for you, Jeremy and Marsha. How would you like for us to frame a session with youth participants? I think we would like a set of 3 to 5 questions that we all have in circulation that would help us prepare for the nature of the conversation. And you can also update us on any sort of plans that you'd like to have for creating a community response event that's separate from this particular event, if that's what you have in mind. So I invite you and Marsha to sort of report out on the work that you guys, that excellent work that you've been doing.
Yeah, so last week on Wednesday, yes, the BSU meetings every Wednesday, and so we were there. Marsha, that was one day she was open and available. So we met with BSU. There was actually a lot of the higher turnout than I thought there was. I thought maybe only like 3 or 2 members. It was like 5 or 7 people. And so we gave them, Marsha typed up a bunch of questions, and we gave them a paper which had the definition, it had what our committee was doing, so like Racial Harms Committee, just in case they had no idea what it was. The second question, well, not really a question, but had the definition of racial harms that we gave to them in front of them. And we decided, what they want to add to it or subtract to it, that they think should or shouldn't be in the definition, or what they classify. Because we're trying to, of course, get the young perspective, especially as, growing up in, 82% white town, what it's like to be a black student in the Northampton High School. So, yeah, that was pretty much what we did. We had a little bit of discussion. And another thing, the idea, or at least the plan, is, of course, in June. The idea that me and Marsha said is, I'm going to meet with them, I think, next week, and we'll come up with a list of ideas of racial harms from the 3 main bullet points, and examples that we define as racial harms that have happened individually or just in general they've seen around the school. And then members of BSU will come to our meeting. We could set a time. I don't know exactly what time, from 5 to 7. People have in mind for them to come and testify exactly when. But then testify those ideas and examples of racial harm that BSU and SoCal experience. So that is the plan that I have in motion. Marcia might have also a little bit more to add to that.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, Jeremy's been great. He set the meeting, the initial meeting with the school. If I can I share the document that I shared with the young people? Okay, I just need you to let me, because I just tried to open share and it won't let me do that. So if you can open up the share. Rest up.
I'm trying. I'm working on it.
Oh. Yeah, so in the meantime, just pop your hand up, Marissa, please, and I'll put it up. Jeremy was kind enough to do an initial email with the I guess she's the assistant principal over student life, and then also the advisor, and also the SOCA advisor as well. And I went out to the school and met with Jeremy and those folks and had a conversation with them. We now have access to their data if we need to, so we can get that. And then I went out to meet with the young people, which was the meeting that the advisor and Jeremy came to. And if I can, I'll pop up the, I'll share it.
Can you,
Yeah,
I just made you a co-host.
Yeah.
Can you?
Can you see it?
No.
Yep.
No.
Not yet.
Okay.
So you want to hit share screen at your bottom? You might know this already.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the young people were able to, I don't know why it's not coming up. Let me try one more time. There it is. Okay, now you should be able to see it. I also started to put this together as a general template that we can use for meeting with the public as an outreach tool, as a way for us to start to have conversations with people. So Garrett, myself, and Usman were talking about some of the things that we would need for that. I got a basic general definition of racial harms from the mental health of America, asking people, is there anything they want to add to this or take away? The young people said they wanted to add physical to this. So mental health, the mental and emotional and physical injuries caused by encounters with racial bias and ethnic discrimination and hate crimes. And then we talked about what the young people were going to be speaking with us about. So just lay out a definition for them for what we are doing as Racial Harms Commission, basically the roadmap that we're putting together to draft up, so we want to draft up a roadmap for how to alleviate harm. So what are the things that the city needs to do to be able to pick up this work after we're done? So we're in the collecting of the data for the racial harms phase. And then we went on to do, then we asked for some feedback for the definition. And then we said, okay, guys, what are some, generate for me, just a conversation, give me a flavor, what we would like to talk to the commission about. And so a lot of things came up, and so we talked through a couple of them and said, okay, these are the things you all want to talk about. So make a list of, 8 to 12 things that you definitely want the commission to hear about, and then 2 to 3 recommendations that you think will help substantially impact and affect meaning results for your generation, school life for young people in the high school and life in the city, and and then talk about how the Black Student Union will prepare. And just like Jeremy's saying, he's going to be meeting with them next week. I'll check in with them, with the advisor and the young people again, to see if they need any more, help from me to get the things into a list that they feel comfortable with. I'm happy to go back and facilitate that for them. And, you know, do they need any help with creating that 2 to 3 recommendations? Now, the reason that I did that was because I only had 35 minutes with these young people. So we can get another flex time if we need to, which is about 35 minutes to just talk through whatever it is, the questions that you folks would like to ask them. But seeing as it'll be a June meeting, it's also the time that they have to be studying for their finals and so on. I know we want to make sure that we get them at the beginning of the meeting and we don't keep them too long. So there's only so much information they can give us. And remember, this has always been a trial run for the outreach team that's trying to put together what the full outreach group will look like. So this will give us a sense of what are some of the things we need to do to be able to collect the data. So this will be our first in-person on the Zoom testimony, so to speak, for the group. So this is what we went over. And just to give you a flavor of what the young people talked about, I'm gonna stop sharing. You know, it ranged in everything from, you know, some of the racial dynamics going on in the school, and you know, some of it, and I said this to Usman in the debrief with him, some of it made me, you know, viscerally feel good about the fact that these young people are in a different place than my generation as a young person in a mostly white school system. And then there were things that made me sad, you know, for them being in a mostly white school system. So I think the testimony will be, I think it'll be good for us to be listening for what's important and then drilling down on the data that they give us, as opposed to giving them a bunch of questions. You know, let's listen to their story, because that's what they did, was tell me a couple of stories about what's happening in the high school. Jeremy, can you give like a concrete example of maybe 1 or 2 items?
Yeah, sure. So one great example, actually, my friend, as I was on the youth commission, I was updating them last week on this, and my friend Kai specifically talked about the hall pass system and who's like mostly allowed, like, or given hall passes. And especially within our school system, I haven't really noticed it, but apparently my friend Kai has noticed a lot of African American students and students of color are given hall passes within the school system, are required and continually checked in general by teachers or by administrators while walking around the school. You know, compared to the average white students who usually are not checked and not given and not receive like punishments for not having a hall pass and things like that. Another example, concrete, is Morrison talked about this, but a lot of online stuff has also been happening. Especially when I was at the middle school, actually, for JFK, this was during COVID, so there's a lot of Zoom stuff, and this is coinciding with January 6th. But students, for example, had like things like Confederate flags as their profile pictures and many similar things like that. And there is apparently for 2 weeks, there's an interim white power kind of student union that was kind of forming within the school as well for like 2 weeks, which was then shut down by administration. But there's also an online esque to racial harms as well as not covered, and that was also going to be added to the definition. So just for 2 quick examples.
Thank you so much. And I just want to provide some point of information for everybody. The student enrollment at Northampton High School is 903. 3% of the school students are African American, and these are figures from 2023. So 3% are African American students. 7.6 are multi-race, non-Hispanic, and that's relevant to us because we've talked a lot about how to make sure multiracial, but mostly biracial, 2 or less other races, including African American. So, and then their white population is at 71.9%, and they have 62 teachers. And so I thought that was important information. I also want to follow up on Jeremy's comment about groups organized by race. The prevalence of groups organized by African American and Black people in the United States is a reflection of reparatory justice because we are an extreme minority and we have been obviously and apparently targeted by racist laws and social customs over a great many number of years, including 400 years, including slavery. This is why African Americans form groups based on race, is as a method to support themselves and empower themselves. It does not work equivalently for white people to form white power groups. That is something that we should have conversations about if it's of interest, but I think we stand with Jeremy with finding white power groups to be problematic in our present day without explanation for the veracity of them existing in that state. So I just want to thank Jeremy and Marcia. From my sense, our questions are, what does it mean to be a successful young person here in Northampton? And what solutions can we consider to bring everybody up to par in terms of our access to benefits and privileges and just a basic rights to humanity? Those seem to be the questions. In terms of documentation, I'll be in contact with you, Jeremy, in terms of just how to present testimony in ways that are, I think, proper in this space. So I'll be contacting you, and I'll put everybody who I think should be that in conversation on how to direct some of the testimony that might come. But otherwise, it seems like we're super excited for this, and please do check in with me about June. So far, it seems like we'll put them on the program for June.
I think that it would be a mistake for us to do a situation where we just skip to what are the things that you think will bring them up to par. I mean, first of all, that language, whatever the language may be, I think those young people, it took us a while to get to the issues that were real for them in this school system. And the reason why they organized themselves as a Black Student Union speaks to what you were talking about, why young people organize themselves in that way. They felt as though students that they're in communication with, putting up white power symbols, I asked them, why do you find that to be problematic? And for them, it was a fear issue. And I don't think you're gonna get to those kinds of issues if you just say, okay, well, what is it that you think will bring you up to par? There's no par for a racist symbol that's been a part of our national history and is, seared into the minds of Black people as racist mobs lynching Black men. Those things are not equal. And so I just want us to be careful that we don't ask these young people questions. It's like an intellectual exercise as opposed to real communication with them about and get to the issues that young people in white school systems, Black young people have to face. Because that doesn't seem to me to get at the issue of why is that symbol, what about that symbol is a problem for you?
I would like to.
Just a second. Albert, I'm sorry.
Hey.
Albert, I'm sorry.
Hello, everyone. I would like to
Albert, I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me?
Albert, I'm so sorry. We cannot take a public comment from you. We have a session at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, I see.
And we may be able to. We may be able to vote to open the floor in the last 5 minutes for additional comments, so please hang on to that. Councilor Elkins, you're acknowledged.
Oh, Marissa's fine. I want to thank Jeremy and Marcia for the work to think through this and to get this rolling. I'm particularly interested in, I have two comments. I'm particularly interested in hearing what the students have to say and then taking that, not asking them to suggest, I mean, I think part of what I imagine can be happening in these sessions is hearing what their experiences are. It's not on them to identify what the city can do. I think part of what I imagine we can be doing is understanding what is within the power of the city, like municipal people doing what municipal things, and so that we can hear what they have to say, and then from that make some recommendations. Like I can, and this is just a spitball, I'm not saying this is like anything that would end up on sort of our final list of suggestions, but when I hear things like concerns about the other sort of student groups that are promoting hateful and racist messages, it is less the answer of like what maybe what they might find useful is something like some real guidance and understanding from the ACLU about the extent of what can be done within the school to cabin that kind of speech. Because because it's both a lesson and we can't shut everything down, but are we educating them and empowering them folks within the full power of what can be done to deal with that situation? So that's just an example. I'm not suggesting necessarily that is the final thing that might end up on a recommendation list, but that is something that I think the city could, or we could bring community organizations to bear on as a suggestion, as something to move forward as a project. So I think it's really promising and a good roadmap for further meetings or for opportunities to hear from the community. The other thing I would say is we have our meetings, and our meetings to do work. We are not limited to that for a session like this. I mean, I had asked that we talk in general about these things like this and future listening sessions and how we want to frame those, because we hadn't really gotten them really off the ground with a kind of a consensus of what we were doing and how they'd be doing. We shouldn't limit ourselves in terms of time to this meeting space. So especially if for the students, it's not going to be ideal for them school-wise. We have between now and then time and opportunity to maybe think about doing it in outside of this meeting space. So that's all.
Bill, you're acknowledged.
I'd like to second what I thought it was these really helpful comments from Marissa. And in particular, I'd like to emphasize that we shouldn't place too heavy a burden on the students. What I would like to use this opportunity for is to get some information about the school system from the administration. And
well, sorry.
I'll defer for anyone who has the information or what the process is for getting it. I think it's important for us to know, or could be important for us to know, how these interactions at the high school affect the students. And I'd like to know whether the students of color at the high school are receiving the services and the help and the support they think they need. I'd like to know whether students of color are getting the kind of support to be accepted at the colleges that they might want to go to. I'd like to know if they're receiving all of those kinds of information that can help them succeed. And if everything is copacetic at the high school, great. I doubt it. I'd like to know about that, and I'd like to know what the administration says needs to be done and is being done to address inequities at the high school. And that's on us to find out from the administration, not on the students to filter for us or to analyze for us.
Rachel?
Excellent. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So just a quick comment. I see this as mostly an opportunity to listen, but I wondered if it would be appropriate to also ask them, what do reparations look like to them?
Marcia?
I just wanted to say that what Bill asked the questions about are the things that the students started to make a list about, because that's what came up. How they're treated when it's time to start looking at schools and as applicants, how they're treated on campus, how they're dismissed for the way they speak. The fact that, and this is where I told you all I felt kind of sad, because they're dealing with a lot of the same issues that my generation dealt with. I'm an Xer. So that is kind of, but those are the things that they want to talk to you all about. And that's why I don't want to just jump over to, okay, what are the things that you all think will bring you to par? Because if they're wrestling with the same things that I wrestled with in my generation, it's not about what's bringing you to par. So, and I think they do have some suggestions, because they do want to know why, it took the feds to get involved with the, those white power movements, which I didn't even know the feds were involved in our junior high school, behind all of that stuff with the white power. And, why do white people still want to touch their hair and stuff? These are the questions that they're still bringing up. And, I think it's on us to listen to them and then try to formulate from the school system what's happening, that the interactions haven't changed.
Thank you. And I wonder if my initial reaction was to ask if the commission could, before the testimonies are made on the floor, could we receive the written testimonies, since they are being written by the students already? If the commission could have them first, and then we can make any adjustments that we might need after having them for us to read first, and then having an opportunity to respond to them in terms of what is articulated on the floor. And that's just my suggestion that I'm throwing back out. I would like for that to happen. Garrick.
Yes. I just want to kind of go off of what Bill said about learning from the administration, and that we should be looking at the liaisons, for instance, for the Black Student Union and these other groups. These are people who have a little more institutional knowledge. Students are only in the space for a number of years. When Marcia and Usman and myself talked, we also discussed maybe having former students give some testimony. I think that would be really beneficial for us to just get, the further out we can pull our lens will give us a little more data. And so I think that we should really look into that.
Bill?
I just want to note that in this city council's charge, in the resolution that created this commission, 3 categories of persons in Northampton were identified: residents, workers, and students. High school students are at least 2 out of 3 of those categories. I think it is an appropriate place for us to focus time, attention, and energy. The one, I think that your suggestion, Sarah, about having written testimony beforehand is an excellent one. I would just caution that we should tell the students that if they give us a document, it's a public record.
Just to respond, we learned from the mayor when she was here that if we circulate a document internally that does not engage in back and forth, we can maintain that document and we do not have to pass it up. That's why I said, so I just want to piggyback to say, both Jeremy and Marcia said that they were writing this down. So it's not like we're asking them to write anything down. They can, in my conversation with Jeremy and Marcia, I can ask them if they want to remove their names. They can give it to us, we can look at it and have a response but the whole city does not see that document. I think that we should have the document first, if they're writing it anyway, right? Marissa?
Yeah, I feel like that, I mean, it sounds like we're talking about high school students who are, going to be maybe close to finals. I mean, I certainly think Jeremy and Marcia, if they were preparing anything that would be helpful to guide us in a discussion, but I wouldn't want high school students to feel like they can't come and speak to us or have the opportunity to speak for lack of a written testimony. And we will be recording, what they say too. So I don't know, the teenager in my life, I think. I would just worry that we might inhibit participation.
Felicia?
I might just say that why don't we circle that question to them and ask them, give them the opportunity to make that decision for themselves if they want to do that.
I agree. I'm sorry to cut you. I was saying, only suggestion was made because they said they were writing it up already, so absolutely. Any other responses on this particular update? Right. Any other updates? Rachel, I think that you're welcome.
Yeah, so I was able to attend the cost of inheritance showing. So I'll just briefly summarize. So there were, as was said, about 30 people, and I took some notes, but they're not perfect. The film was shown. 3 people from the original Reparations Committee spoke about their efforts towards talked about efforts towards reparations here. And facilitators there asked if any commissioners would speak, and I just gave a summary of our efforts. Then there was a big discussion that various people raised ideas. And this is a rough idea of what they were. Slavery is not just in the South, but in the North as well. And they discussed Northampton specifically. It was mentioned that we read the names of enslaved people at one of our commission meetings and how powerful that was. There's a big project coming from UMass exploring enslavement in this area. There's a description of the Ruggles Center and a note that the commission was invited to a special tour if we wished. Several people expressed doubt that any community could really financially do much in terms of significant funding. And then there was a discussion of redlining. People talked about what other cities are doing in terms of reparations, including mortgage assistance, youth development, help with small business skills, etc. One person called for a discussion of what actually could be done here. And then what followed from that are, where will the resources come from? What about leaning on specific families who have benefited for them to donate money or even require it? And that suggestion didn't seem very doable to most participants because all white people in this community benefited, and all white people have a responsibility. Corporations, along with government, need to be giving funding because they benefited. You can't just ask working families to donate money. It won't fly. Taxation, we don't have the greatest record. We haven't gone far enough to educate people in terms of racial harms and history. Tell people in the community what happened in this city with regard to racism, enslaved people, and economic benefits to Northampton, population shifts, income, redlining, Jim Crow, etc. People here just don't know enough about it. Again, I'm just repeating things that were said. Are we sending as many black kids to high-end colleges as white kids? Old Deerfield is going to post plaques in front of houses that had enslaved people. Could we do that? One person said they would happily donate some of their wealth, and others will too. Donate cannabis money with so many black people having been incarcerated and affected by incarceration. Request money on websites. One person said, why are so few black people here at this meeting that I was at? But also in the town, where there's so few people, black people here, what are the changes that occurred over time? And the quote was, we bear a moral injury and reparations can be an act of atonement.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have a response to Rachel's report? I'm happy to go next on some items because I feel like they may speak to. So one of the things I've been working on is the history of Black Northampton, and I started in 1654, and I've been working my way up to the mid-20th century. I've so far been able to receive the profiles of our residents, Black residents, starting in 1840. From 1840 to 1900, I have graphs of how they contributed to our economy through their particular work objectives. So I have them all listed by employment. For the 20th century, I'm able to map by ward where our Black residents lived. I started the project to map all of our Black residents from 1840 up to 1950, which is over 100 years. However, it was really difficult to do that work from 1840 to 1880. So I've paused that because we don't have the right documents that tether addresses to wards right now without me going into a very specific set of maps that take a lot of eye strain. So I started it was just, I had to go one by one to place a resident in a ward, and it's a lot of work to do that. So I paused that. I can do it much more quickly for the 20th century. I did promise to have those maps available. I will have those maps for the 20th century at our June meeting, and we will be able to look at actual movement and talk about what segregation means for that. I've also submitted a letter to Alan Seawald requesting legal opinion which will be featured in our final report. The objective is to hear from him as to what legal maneuvers via local and state level legislature and mayoral action would be needed for us to actually pay or direct repertory finances from our public funds towards specifically African and Black Americans here. What happens is that so far we can create a list of objectives that the city can support right now, as long as they are created from the experience of Black Americans as opposed to only for Black Americans. We can right now create a second list on charitable donations from the greater public community that are for Black Americans, because that is something that will be materialized through the public sphere. Now, I can give you some examples of those objectives that we've already outlined. So if we had our perfect list for reparations, we are building this list, what would we ask for? We would ask for DNA testing for African Americans and Black people, so that someone could come and ask for a voucher for DNA testing from the municipality, and they would give them a voucher and they could go and perform a DNA test through a company. We've already agreed that a Juneteenth festival needs to be created at an annual time frame. We talked about the need for a selection of a street to be renamed Sojourner Truth Avenue or some such thing. We talked about a life skills handbook that would be directed towards 18 to 22-year-olds to help them navigate processes of civil life, such as getting a driver's license, bank account, vehicle registration, taxes, fees, the sort of things that substantiate a person's day-to-day life as a citizen, voting obviously too. We talked about the incorporation of or funding for college preparation courses at the high school level, and a variety of other examples are falling under our dream list. Our charitable industry recommendations include college preparation courses already, right? So this is something that the public can create, job training workshops, the management of an annual citywide African American cultural event. So those are the sorts of things that fall under our charitable donations list. And then the third list is the list that appears in the early document that I circulated where we were thinking about these things back in August, right? Ensuring that we have plenty of PTVA bus stops and that they have timetables associated. Ask also if they can create any warming devices, how we can make sure that there are always bus stops in low-income areas. We talked about Again, community events, historical placards placed around the area, attending to Black figures and abolitionist events, important abolitionist events. Recruiting or bolstering access to child care services in Northampton. Continuing support for our local libraries and cultural preservation centers. We already know how instrumental Forbes Library and Historic Northampton have been, and to ask that exhibits be created based on our commission reports in terms of the history that we are accumulating. I didn't mention before, but there are these wonderful images of Black school children from the early 20th century that Forbes has. So we will have a catalog of images of our youth from the 20th century who were going to school, even under the context where there were racist housing covenants still in activity here by 1927. I'm happy to continue to talk about some of our examples of reparations initiatives that we're asking for. We do have, for example, 80 Acres, which is a school, a climate and racial justice school. I believe they may still be operating out of First Churches of Northampton, but I need to get in contact with her. That is an example of an existing framework for liberation, right, education that's both for African Americans and other races of people. And that could be a good example of a community organization that can help us facilitate what we're asking for. If you visit 80 Acres website, they actually disperse grants from $10,000 to $100,000 for community level events. So what I am suggesting is that this commission or the city could work with an existing nonprofit like 80 Acres to use those grants for the reasons that we are asking for, because that's literally what those grants are there for. One would have to fill out an application as well. Finally, my next update has to do with our conversations with the Donahue Institute. As you know, that institute is available for us just like they were available to Amherst to create a present-day demographic report of our community. I am doing the demographic report from 1840 up until present day, just to tell us how many Black people live here, right, which actually was work. They will focus on a lot of the overview of our systematic state of living, employment, income, housing, that kind of stuff. They'll produce that report for us. We also are able to work with them, and I'm in the process of organizing that, to produce a survey that will have questions separated for residents, workers, and now I can add students, because I hadn't thought of that. So my plan for June, our meeting, is to provide you a really short handout of the options we have for surveying our community. What type of questions? We already suggested as a group we don't necessarily invite the itemizations of wrong, of harms at the level of itemization for our survey. If people want to come to us and talk to us in person, they're able to do that. But we so far have agreed not to invite the itemization of harms at the granular level. Overview of ideas of how we can improve the state of things, overview of the nature of things. And so I will be handing out that document for us to work on together. And that is my report.
Oh yeah, I saw Bill. I was gonna, Bill, I'm gonna turn to you because I'm sure you're gonna respond to something that Sarah said where I have an update.
I'd just like to ask Sarah two things. One is with regard to the opinion from Attorney Seawald from the city solicitor, what I would request, let me put it this way, what would be helpful to me is to have a document in the nature of a draft from Attorney Seawald so we can pose questions to him. It doesn't come as a completed document, but here, thank you for this overview. Here are the questions we raise so we could have a more complete legal opinion. Because in part, this is prompted by your report, Sarah, about working with a nonprofit, with a 501c3. And for example, the question that came to mind while you were talking is, could the city funds could city funds be contributed to this nonprofit for use in a project that we know is based in part on racial characteristics? I'd like to know the answer to that. I mean, it really does influence how I think we conceptualize what we can do. The other comment, I don't mean to steal the thunder from your report, but I'd love to know what the population of persons of color in Northampton has been, and in particular, has there been a change? And I go back to what was part of the City Council's resolution, which was the report that because of the Fugitive Slave Act, a significant part of the African American population in this town left and escaped to Canada. I'd like to know more about that. I'm not sure what it does, but it raises a significant issue that we kind of approach and then we get away from it and then we go back to it, which is this relatively small number of African Americans in this community. It's both, it plays out in all sorts of ways for our work here. But I'd like to know more about that because it's both a disadvantage to our work. We would know a lot more if there were 40% black people, African Americans in this community. You'd really have a more, I think, comprehensive view of how the city has reacted and not reacted to the trauma of slavery. But we don't. And I'd like to know why, and I'm not sure where it takes us, but I think understanding of that may inform our conclusions.
Thank you so much. I did invite Alan Sewall to one of our meetings in the next 2 months to try to have an opportunity for everyone else to articulate their desires. My sense is that his report will end up in our final report, but not our preliminary report, and that we should give him at least 2 to 3 months to write it and produce a draft for us, and then, yes, have an opportunity for us to comment before it reaches our final report. And I thought it might be useful just to say that we have our population of African Americans hovers, if we count biracial folks too, right around 1,000, a little bit over 1,000. In the 19th century, it ranged from 14 people in 1840 that was recorded in the census, which doesn't mean it's necessarily 100% accurate, but 14 people were counted, and under 500 people throughout the 19th century. And then once the 20th century came into formation, the population grew more so towards the 800 to 1,200 range, and we've been hovering around, 1,000 for the most part for a while now.
Which is like, what, 2%?
It's about 3.6%. What's happening now is most people count 2.1%. Those are black only, but we have a lot of people who are biracial. So black and white or black and something else, and so that number is most accurately, from my tabulations, 3.6% of us are black and African American.
Just going to add a couple comments just to respond to Bill. I have anecdotal evidence of exactly what you said. So the question is, going with some of the researchers, obviously at the Ruggles Center and others, to give you see if we have more details about the crew that left. Because I'm just haven't gotten into that stuff recently, but definitely there's evidence, you know what I mean? It's just a matter of getting, people want to know quantitative, well, was it 30 people that left? Was it 20? And that's what gets more difficult. I mean, the way to answer it has to do with property sales and people leaving, and if we could get to that would do it. So I'll certainly look into that, you know what I mean, the sort of detail as much as possible. So I just want to respond to that. Otherwise, I wanted to do a quick update.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to stop there for a second, because for me, understanding what the white people in this community did or failed to do to protect African Americans here might be really informative and helpful in creating reparations for that failure. That's why I'd love to understand it better.
And there's also the matter of the 1855 school segregation law that was passed at the state level, which criminalized school segregation. And we could talk a lot about the influences of that during the Fugitive Slave Act, and how it would implicate any African American in a classroom anyway. because you are against the law right there for fugitives specifically.
I just wanted to give a quick update. I just realized that I didn't have a chance to update us on the Power of Truth Conference. And we had a panel, a good portion of us were there, to do, sort of early outward-facing work around discussing with those who were at the conference, at least, questions, interests that they had about the work that we've been doing. We obviously wanted it to be an opportunity to hear expectations and we did get some of that. But we also had a chance to hear from people in the community, and particularly St. John's Church and the work that they're doing towards reparations. And so in some ways, I feel like it was a success in the sense of having an outward presence to at least a group of people, to let them know who are some people on the commission, others who are in attendance, and also to and I had 2 specific question suggestions, which I'll obviously put in the report and we could talk about, and then others raised questions around the work they're doing in the community, nonprofits, and thinking about ways to coincide with assisting us in this effort to gather as much information as we can about racialized harms, et cetera. So wanted to share that with the with everybody. And I don't know if people who were there will have any other comments, but otherwise, if people who weren't there have questions, we can maybe take a moment to answer them.
Marcia?
No, I was one of the presenters. I actually wanted to comment about something else, so I'll wait until that's done.
All right, any other reports from our commissioners? Garrick?
Yes.
So I just wanted to touch in on the Power of Truth too, because I was there as part of that. It was nice. I did want to state that the mayor was also there as well, which is, part of the best thing about this whole select committee is that it is a joint committee between the city council and the mayor's office. So it was nice to have her there. One thing that stood out for me was Laura Fragamini talked about early childhood and child care subsidies, and I think that's something that we have not really discussed here in our meeting, so that is something to maybe put on our aspirational list, is look at some funding for things like that. And if there you go. And also a thing that I had in my notes was that someone said that there always should be a commission to look at this, that this is something that should be continuous. And I think that when Marissa and myself and Jamila wrote it, we were thinking of this being the first step. So I just wanted to say that people are also aware that this work shall continue. And so we're laying that foundation.
I think that's really excellent. What it brings to mind is that there's a commission on the status of African Americans at the state level, and I think they have one too at the state level for Asian Americans. So it's really nice to see that there's that culture. And I just wanted to emphasize how I plan on engaging Alan Seawald around the question of subsidies specifically. Garrick, I'm so happy you mentioned that, because I think subsidies is a special tool that we should be asking the state to consider if they aren't all in, right, for special legislation for full-on monetary payments of any sort, right, to one racial groups. Well, subsidies require payment from an individual plus payment from a municipality or some other organization towards a specific service. And I think subsidies might be something we should really interrogate as a real tool that fits in between direct payments, which we're not asking for, but also like moneyed materials, right? And I think subsidies does work. That's really important. So thank you for mentioning that, because ultimately the money goes towards a service, right, directly.
So,
I just want to can I just make one other comment real quick about that?
Sure.
Because Garrett, when you brought that, it reminded me that something we haven't, I don't believe, gotten into. There was someone had mentioned that they would be excited if the commission was able to help guide within different, like, school of education. How do they approach the questions we're raising? How can they themselves, different institutions, organizations themselves, do this work, look for research, and then come up with potential ways to repair harm done? And I thought, that's like that other layer, right, where we're presenting recommendations, but there are people who actually have the ability like now to begin to actualize things, within their realm. And there was an enthusiasm about, getting what information they can to help around, specifically around, say, for example, education, right? So it, back to the stuff that Marcia and Jeremy brought up, but then those who are working for the Department of Education are also saying, like, yes, what can we, can you give us guidance so the work I'm doing will reflect the impulse of the commission and to try to address racialized harm. So I thought that was a helpful reminder that there are people waiting to receive our content, you know what I mean? And so they can get to the task of problem solving within their context. So I just want to, because you brought that up of some concrete suggestions, that was one that I thought, we've touched on it a bit, but those working behind the scenes is the crew I'm talking about, as opposed to teachers or people who are interacting with the public more. So anyway, all right, I think that's all, unless anyone else, and then Marcia.
Yeah, the other thing that we've been working on in the outreach group is a discussion, which Sarah knows I've said to her a couple of times, about creating, some people would say a steering committee, other people might call it an executive committee, to centralize all this information and then to organize it and make sense of it. Because right now we're talking about an interim report and a final report, and we're nowhere near ready to do that. Right now, when I hear of the research work that we were talking about the last time we met, we were talking about putting in, saying that we couldn't get certain data, so on. And there's a lot of different ways to talk about data than more than just showing numbers. So I just want to make sure we come together and look at an outline for an interim report that will lay out how we're going to get to where we're going. So my suggestion, and I'll come back to this again, is to reorganize ourselves in a way that people can engage with us, like what we did with what we're starting to do with the high school. And Usman, myself, and Garrett in the group we were in, we're talking about the next phase, what might be to look at a way to bring in adults from going through a strategy of the churches. So if we contact all the churches across Northampton and ask if they can send their folks of their African American Black members to come to meetings, engagement, possibly being able to do much like the students are doing, be able to come together and be able to put forth what their concerns are, what their historical information they want to offer. So, I mean, just meeting with at the Conference of Truth, we met with the churches and found out the churches are doing a whole workout around this. So there's a whole church piece that goes in with how African Americans were enslaved through the church structure. So we're not ready for that. And the first thing that we need to do, in my opinion, I've talked to them about some of this, is to restructure so that we can manage ourselves better. And how do we do that? I would suggest is to have a clearinghouse team that can then take all the data, look at it, figure out what data is backup data, what data we still need to go out and find, and answer questions like Bill is having, because that's my question too. And then my question is, what is the legal ramifications here? We need a whole legal workout, which I doubt if Attorney Seawall is going to be able to answer those questions, because this might be out of his depth. So that would be my suggestion, and what that structure would be, to start with 3 basic teams that the committee members could get themselves into, and so we can do some panels, do some learning together.
Thank you, Marcia. I think this leads into our next agenda item, which is a discussion about open meeting law and subcommittees. So I know someone else requested that. Oh, Marissa, please.
And I know, Marcia, you've been asking for sort of an update about this, and I spoke to Attorney Seawald about this because I wanted to be, and I asked him, specifically within the context of what this commission is doing, how we could structure ourselves without running afoul of open meeting law. And so first of all, as a basic premise, open meeting law says that we cannot get together and talk in any group that constitutes a quorum of the whole body about things that we will be, the subject matter of our commission, which essentially, I think maybe we're down to 10, right? Because we lost one of our members. I think essentially means that we, not more than 5 of us could get together and talk about any one specific something that we would be essentially. I think the fair way to say it is to end up in the report, or that we might be making decisions about. But this is a working group in a commission. So what I asked Attorney Seawald about is, how can we structure ourselves into smaller groups to get work done? And so the short answer is we can get to, as long as it's less than the quorum, we can get together and work on any specific things that we want to. Where we run into trouble is if we as a group decide or the chair assigns any particular assigned group of people and delegate specific work to them, that becomes a subcommittee. So if, for instance, we as a group say we're going to have an executive committee, whoever is on it, that smaller group won't be able to get together and discuss they can't get together and discuss outside of public meeting if they have more than their quorum. So if it's only 5 people, then any 3 people would be too many. They couldn't get together and talk privately. You can get together and talk all you want, but you have to post a meeting, follow all the rules that say about when you're posting and where you're meeting, and so that people know how they can attend. So all that is. So the thing I asked him about was, so if we can't delegate work, can we decide amongst or can we pick off things that we're interested in, which is kind of what we've been doing. People have kind of been pairing off to doing their work and then reporting back, what's interesting them. He says that's fine, and it's just at the level at which anybody's being assigned to do something and told exactly, to report back and what.
But we talked about this, Marissa. I do think that we should set up subcommittees with the open meeting law. We don't have anything to hide. What are we hiding?
Marcia, I'm just explaining what the law is. I think whether or not we do any particular executive, any committee for any purpose, I think that's a decision for us to make together. Because part of the ramifications is we're going to have to follow whatever that group is. If we give them a job, they're going to have to follow open meeting law. And it's not so that's the law if we don't make an assignment. The other thing is that there's been some question about how do we know what people are doing so that we don't duplicate work. So I specifically asked, we can do a Google Drive that's like a depository, and it's not public. We can share it amongst ourselves as long as we are not working collaboratively on things within it outside of open meeting law. So what we can't do is have a Google Doc. We can't have a Google Doc that we are all like typing on outside of meetings. some group less than the quorum can work on a part of it and work on things and then bring that contribution back. We just can't do that thing where we all like pile in and work on a document. We could wordsmith in the context of something here or something like that. And we can't have those kinds of discussions either in like Google Drive or by email. We really cannot talk about reply all continues to be, and I'm not singling anybody out or whatever because we've had these discussions. We can share information, but we can't have like any kind of back and forth discussion about essentially the substance of it, which is why like we want to share information. I think we ought to set up a Google Drive that people can throw things in and be like, it's fine to say this interests me and I found it or whatever. So,
Like as a resource.
As a resource, yeah.
Rachel?
I am highly in favor of having a Google Drive as a repository, as you say. And it'll be hard not to chime in, but we shouldn't chime in. And just have that a place so that we can avoid duplication and we can refer to it so that we're checking ourselves on it. And I think it would be so much better than sending email to the groups. So I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea too. I am happy to start posting and start the repository. I think what's most important to be out there for you guys is the table of contents, which we do have a table of contents for real substantial reports. This has been ongoing for months now. Many of us have written content, shared content. It's been produced here in this space. So just so that falls and lands for everyone here, there is a report, it exists. So I'm happy to put the table of contents up. I'm happy to put the 3 lists of recommendations that we've generated. And obviously it'd be great for people who have parts of research that they're focused on. So you already sent healthcare data. I already mentioned that the Donahue Institute is going to give us a present day demographic report. It already exists in the Amherst group's document. The fact that we have to keep saying these same things is startling to me. We know that Bill Newman has crafted, I know you sent me your notes that I could turn into a section, but he's welcome to write it up himself, a section on the history of racist housing covenants and relevant laws and decrees that have happened. Unfortunately, our registrar of deeds stepped down, and I was hoping we could actually have some conversation about the implications of that on our outstanding report, which we asked the city to look into its records to see how racist housing restrictions have survived beyond 1927. That was our request. They had already said they would do that research. However, our registrar of deeds stepped down and they are searching for a new one. So that might be an example of a project we have that won't materialize by the time of the report, but we have certain types of information that still can go into the report.
So I didn't reach Mary Oberding. I've been trying to reach her, and I didn't know this, but I will. But I have tried to reach her, and I just sent her an email while we were here. So news to me. Anyway, but I think the information from the Registry of Deeds is important, and I will follow up on it. I'd like, if I have something substantive. I mean, this is procedural and substantive. I don't mean to mix and match, but if you want to stay on the open meeting law issue, I have.
Does anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments and questions. So I just want to make sure, because a lot of what you said, Marissa, was a little confusing to me, because I think it's confusing. Let me just say it back to you, like an eighth grade, like I don't know, my young kids are smart, so I won't even. So a study group, a group of people can study housing, get together, meet every week, every day, not a violation of open meeting laws, correct? Okay, but
as long as it's less than 5.
As long as it's less than 5, perfect. So the only issue is if we call it a subcommittee and Sarah and myself as chairs assign the work to that group. That is the only issue.
I think if we get to the point of this group is going to cover this topic, and their assignment is to organize 3 panels and write this section, and it's due back at this date. I think when you get to that level of delegation.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so that is.
Okay, so there's one more question. Last question is that we could still do that as long as we posted it 48 hours in advance, did roll call, followed all the procedures. So even if we did say, you do this, you do that, y'all could still do it as long as it adhered to open meeting laws, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so basically there's no issue whatsoever with either us delegating or study groups.
Correct.
No issue whatsoever, as long as the people agree that they have no problem having open meeting laws, and they adhere to them, which means basically 48 hours in advance, roll call, I don't know, recording it, whatever way. Is that correct?
I would agree with that, yeah. I mean, I think whether we as a body, what subcommittees we decide to do, yes,
I just want to make sure that it's concrete, black and white.
But I don't
Concrete,
think it's,
black and white.
based on the document that I read, I don't think it's determined on the chairs, which is why I think, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say that, let's not even get to that yet. I just wanna make sure everyone in the room is concrete, crystal clear, because I wasn't until right now. Now I feel like it's concrete, crystal clear, that it is possible to form subcommittees or study groups.
Correct.
If we agree to do that. Not saying it, but if we agree with that. Okay, so.
Whatever we decide to do, there's a way to do.
There's a way to do it. There's a way to do both. Okay, I just want to make sure that's true. Now that's the case, can we take a moment, I know we're running out of time, of course, to just discuss whether it's something that we as a group want to do?
I think if someone wants to propose a subcommittee, they should propose a subcommittee, and then we can respond to it. I mean, this is what this is for.
Marcia, do you have a subcommittee to propose?
I proposed 3 so far, and I wrote them up and sent them out to most of the people that I was interested in talking with about their specific subcommittee. The legal committee, which is going to look at both the Reconstruction era and then modern day redlining, home ownership, and tenant issues, and any other legal issues that come up or having to do with African American. It might even include, what's going on with, say, diversity and how that impacts. The steering, what some people said to use the word steering as opposed to executive committee, whatever word you would like. And then the committee of the outreach committee. And then what Rachel has been working on, which is Rachel, it sounded to me like you've been doing like education and healthcare, sort of health disparities almost. It sounded like, is that correct, Rachel?
Yeah, I found a report that I shared that I think gave a lot of information, some at the city level, some at a broader level than that, and mostly focusing on healthcare, but it also talked about demographics and housing, et cetera. So it kind of bled into other areas, but yeah, I did share that, and I thought it was a pretty rich document.
Right. So those were the 3 subcommittees and a central body to act as a clearinghouse.
So the next person has their hand up is Marissa.
Because I've talked with you, Marcia, and I've also, I know this idea's been floating out there. And I want to preface this by saying I don't think this is an issue of hiding our work. Of course, everything's going to come back into what we, our final report and our meetings as we finalize those things. I'm in favor of, putting aside the question of any kind of sort of steering group or something like that, but in terms of, I would prefer to keep study groups. We've kind of paired off into things that interested us, and begun to report back. I think that when we come back into the group, it's helpful to have some more structure about how we're going to put it all back together. But I think there's a tremendous amount of freedom and creativity that can happen when we're kind of pairing off based on what our interest and our skill sets is and what we bring to the commission to be able to do that work. Kind of as Marcia and Jeremy decide they were going to go forward and do this thing. If we'd called it a subcommittee, then they would have had to post things and do that. And I think we can actually get a lot more work done that we then bring back to the group. And then if we start using the repository, we centralize our information, we can avoid the duplication of work. I also think that those working groups, as we pair off into whatever interests or whatever we're working on, we can make sure that everything we want is covered by what people are agreeing to do, and fill in gaps if we identify any, and then and that those folks can, because one thing that's sort of happened organically is people, as they've been interested in things, have just hopped into events and communities in the community and brought our work into things that are already happening in the community. And then also there's things that have been organized from within our group. So I feel like there's a lot of flexibility and creativity that also that everybody who's here can feel like they've contributed and contributed within what they can do and what their wheelhouse is and all that kind of stuff. So I think I would prefer to see the substantive, at least the substantive work, meaning the subject matter, not be delegated out into subcommittees. It just strikes me as getting really hamstrung and inhibiting our process. So that's my take on that. I'm sorry, there was a lot of words to say it.
Felicia?
Whether it's subcommittees or sort of working research groups, whatever it is that we call it, back when we started, Sarah had initially gave us 5 sort of areas, and so I'm a little confused why there's some sort of, I'm not confused, I guess initially we all kind of saw that and we're supposed to get back in terms of what we wanted to work on, and so now I'm hearing that people are sort of proposing new research groups or whatever it is that we're calling that, and I'm just wondering how many people actually got back to Sarah with the interest, and where if we can kind of, instead of duplicating more or replicating the same thing that we've already done in the past, can we go back to look at what folks said that they're interested in researching?
You have that list?
I don't think people did that. That's the issue.
I can share those 5 groups with you.
Real quick,
Sure.
do you have time?
And people did respond, and I did try to put people into committees. This is kind of like amnesia, like presenting this as if it's a brand new thing. I think actually it would be great if we can just merge this into our next 2 items to just see how this all comes together for everybody, which is we should be thinking, I think, first about our timeline, and then we should come up with a concrete idea about if we want to, in this summer, hold some kind of commission event. We've already discovered that there are other groups that hold events that we can go to. There was one at College Church. I was there. Garrick was there. I spoke there. Bill Newman was there. There was the Power of Truth. Rachel was there that first one. Rachel was there. Usman spoke at that one. Right? We've been sharing the community engagement component, and so trying to force us into groups when we've already been doing it organically, like Marissa has been saying, seems to kind of create concrete walls that we don't need, because we're all doing it, right? We really are showing up at these events and speaking indifferently. So, for example, this past Saturday, I went with my student and her boyfriend to the Unnamed Figures event out at historic Deerfield, and spent time at the printing shop there too, learning about the print history. And I dug into the depths of things, some more of my research, and I found out we had exactly 1 black printer who worked as an apprentice to the Black printer, because the question was, how well did we have access to modes of written language in production? So like I said, I think that a lot of this stuff is happening organically, and so I think that we should move into a conversation about a timeline.
So before we do that, can we take on, after, I know it was Usman that asked a specific question. I put it on the table. I'd like to talk about, before we jump into something else, very clearly, that we put together a central group that's gonna be able to house all this information so we know where we're going and what we're doing. And I don't think it's amnesia, because if people had responded to that, we wouldn't. There is communication coming in to various people that we need to be more organized. So I don't think that it's amnesia.
So Marissa has her hand up to respond.
I might suggest a vote, if we want to put it on the floor to do some kind of subcommittee. If Marcia would like to propose that, I would propose we vote on it so we can decide and put it to rest, one way or the other.
And I just want to second,
I'm just going to put forward the clearinghouse group to organize us. That's all I'm going to put forward now.
No, I just want to say that we can, as you said, I agree with you. If people have right now in 2 seconds, like if people have right now, I'll just say that doing a group of people I like study group, working group. That's focused on what type of community engagement can we be a part of to ensure that we're making ourselves open and available. That's the committee I want to be on. If anyone else wants to be on it with me, you're welcome to be on it. If anyone has any other committees they want to come up with right now and bring up, we should bring them up.
So you have a community, a group you want to
Study
bring
working
up?
group.
Yeah, I think that the group that you're talking about, which I would also like to be on,
Great.
could also be talking about outreach so that people know what we're doing and come to these meetings and know about these meetings, because I've heard from various people that it's hard to get that information even though we know how to do it. So I think that could be part of it.
We got two people on that committee, or not committee. It's a
Don't go to committee.
outreach study group, working group. It's outreach working group, where people are. So that we're getting close to the number of people. So, I mean, we got Marcia, myself, Garrett, when we can, not weekly, but available. So that's one group. Any others?
Well, I'm interested in sort of the original education and arts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I'd be interested in researching, studying, or working through, and thinking about programming for our work.
Great.
All right.
Anyone else want to be on that study group?
You're saying yes?
Oh, no, I had another suggestion.
So, okay, so what's your suggestion?
I would be interested in the legal questions, because, I mean, we want to hear from Alan Seawald, and he's as per the sort of resolution, he's going to be available to us to answer questions, but I don't think he should be writing
The legal opinion?
Yeah, no, I think that, not to volunteer Bill Newman or anything, but but he's clearly going to we're going to want to work on this. We're already talking about these issues, so.
Is that a working group that we feel like could exist? I guess we need more than one person to make it a group, otherwise it's just an individual.
Because it's definitely.
Well, he's doing housing covenants, so I didn't know if he wanted to double dip, but it's related, so.
So, I'm sorry. So a couple things. One is I'll be happy to talk with Alan Seawald about this. I actually agree with the idea of let's not put anything in writing quite yet. We're going to get the cart in front of this horse, but I'd like to know what Alan's perspective is on this. I'd like to share mine with him, and I think we would go from there. But I do think that our preliminary report can say we have raised certain issues with Attorney Seawald, and we're looking for those answers. We don't have to, in our preliminary report, to answer the questions. We do have to raise them, I think. I'd be interested to go back to this for a second, in a study group with regard to education, I would like, though, I know that there was no particular enthusiasm when I brought this up before, but I think that Smith College is a significant part of this discussion for a number of reasons. First of all, what did Smith do? Second, Smith College for a long time has had, for example, tuition waivers for residents of Northampton. How many have gone to black people and black families? I'd be interested to know that. I'd be interested to know what happened at the founding. A revolutionary idea in many ways. I mean, Mount Holyoke was part of that revolution, but the seminary in Mount Holyoke and Smith
UMass was established in 1863 during the Civil War, so there's,
as a land-grant college, right. And I'd like to know what has been the history of those institutions with regard to admissions of African-American students from this community. And in that regard, there's more. Northampton High School, until relatively recently, had tracking. How did that work with regard to the African-American community? And Northampton had other institutions that we haven't mentioned. The Northampton had a junior college here for years, Williston, Northampton. Half of that school is Northampton.
School for girls, yeah.
And I think that those institutions and questions about what their policies were and how they affected Northampton, since students are one of those three groups, I think that's important. And I think, and I volunteer, you're really good, you should do it. No.
Education and arts. So you see,
We're doing a lot of volunteering other people.
but I'd be interested in doing some work on that.
Would we be, just have a question. Would it be possible if we could agree, and this is on the table, just for people to agree or not, to somehow communicate the work you're doing? Like, not in a way that's cumbersome, I guess it doesn't have to be narrative, but just to get a sense of what people are up to, just so there's a clear, because I think that that's part of the issue, is that I do think that some of us are uncertain what's happening, and they there's just lack of clarity because people are doing some great work individually. So if we have, we have 4 committees, 3 committees, not committees, working groups?
So just now, educational arts was proposed and people volunteered. The outreach study group is not something that came into formation, but a community engagement group. So
Yep.
two groups
And
came.
legal?
And legal.
Yeah, I volunteered for that community engagement group. I actually will finish up the work that I was doing with the high school, but my interest is with the legal group. That's that reconstruction, and then Bill, what you were talking about, what happened to those African Americans that left this area.
So I just wanted to comment on structure and organization. I have been trying to be a good chair for a very long time, and as you all know, I talk to you guys on the phone, I text you, or I get an email that says I want this on the agenda, and I'd like it to be on the agenda, or there's this activity going on, and I've been doing that work. I contacted Alan Seawall based on the demand of the group. When we first started meeting, the group asked for a legal opinion. It's still up for debate whether or not that opinion goes into our report. It might just be for us. And I mentioned that because I had a conversation with the mayor about funding for a legal opinion, and she said that I would like Alan Seawall to produce for you a legal opinion. So that's what we're doing. It's actually something that the mayor encouraged us to do. It doesn't have to end up in the report, but it is something that you guys asked for. I asked for it as a liaison, and it's coming into fruition, I think. So that just shows you how things are moving through. The Chambers of Progress, I'm happy to create the Google Doc. From my sense, I have probably the long form report in this draft form. That Google Drive can easily be uploaded with our 3 lists of recommendations. Obviously, each day you have an opportunity to say, Sarah, you need to throw something else on that list. Here it is. Anyone can do that. There are no restrictions. I think that we can have a community thread or we can have a system where people send emails to everybody on their updates and their progress. So far, if someone has hard information, someone like Rachel, they send it to me, or a list of relevant legal laws and statutes, they've sent it to me. That got put into a section in the report. I've asked for other parts of the report that are still outstanding. Folks know that. Trying to come up with another committee to duplicate leadership, for me, does not sound necessary. I don't have anyone opposing anything. I'm not trying to control anybody. This is a small group trying to create 3 new committees plus another leadership committee is redundant and a tax on all of us. So if there is a vote necessary for a new executive committee, that vote has to be seconded, and I will stand against it. I don't think we need a vote for committees, because you guys are, we're just all people in a room that are agreeing to be together. So.
I agree with that. I think it's nice to say all of that, and, who wants to go against that, Sarah? You know what I mean?
It's the truth. Did I say anything that's not truthful?
Yeah, because right now, most people don't know what's in any of the document that you're talking about. I haven't even seen an outline for the document that you were talking about. We barely read through in the first 2 meetings, and there was opposition to even the definition you were using.
Yes, there was. Just a second. There was opposition, and you asked for the Heritage Dictionary, because I want you to know, Marcia, that I listened to you, and I'm 100% in it for the good. So I know the Oxford English Dictionary didn't satisfy 2 of you. Guess what? I made a comment. Oh, let me finish now, because I want to make sure you know that I know. Oxford English Dictionary, by including that term, that is the acknowledged language of white European Americans. That is a dictum in a dictionary that says, I acknowledge that a word reparations exists for the situation such as now. That we have a situation that we have to ask questions about whether or not white Americans in this country have treated us right as African Americans and black people, stemming from slavery to present day. So my sense was that we needed to hold white Americans to their own dictionary. Then we have a second incorporation where I mentioned Heritage Dictionary, however, fulfills the premises that many of the African American communities have right now, according to what reparations means. And that definition goes first. And then we have a third definition from the NATO, right? We've covered all 3 of these definitions in the course of our conversation. I am here as our chief scribe. I am writing what we say. I am not producing anything that is not implicative of this whole group's engagement. I understand as chair that it might just seem like authority grab, but I work a lot. I'm not paid. I stay in conversation. I stay in good attitude with positivity, and I have to you directly offered to step down if you were truly upset with me. You know this is true. So remaining
That's not true. What are you talking?
Remaining critical of me and of this group unnecessarily is bringing down our morale. We can just be positive, Marcia. It's positivity that's going to keep us together.
Sarah, I don't have anything against the work you're doing. Not at all. See, that's what I'm saying. You make it personal. It's not personal for me, girlfriend. Let me just be very clear. Sister, I respect your game. It has nothing to do with it. What I'm saying to you is, people have repeatedly said to you, I don't know why you don't want to hear it, but for some reason you refuse to respect it, that people don't have a central understanding of what's going on. I don't know how many times people have to say that to you for you to hear it.
I've heard it, and I mentioned last month in April that I would produce a table of contents. Forgive me, I have grading. This is an accelerated moment in my personal career. I think all of us are allowed to have like maybe one session where we get caught up in our real lives and our work. So that is my mistake. I just said today that I promised to create that Google Doc. In fact, since I might not be believed, I'm not a co-host. I'm looking at the document. So it's not a lie. I'm happy to put it up. I'm not hiding anything. It was so that it could be nice enough to be seen by, at the very least, this group, because documents are long and wieldy and have comments and stuff, but it's all there. It's a real thing. Marcia, Marissa, you're gonna say something about time?
No.
Okay.
I was gonna say that I hope maybe if we set up the Google Drive, that could be very helpful with this, that there's room in there for the unfinished and the imperfect and the thoughts in process, that so that we can all feel like we are abreast of everything that everybody is doing. Nobody wants anybody to step down. We all want to just not duplicate each other's work, and I would like to put to bed the question of whether or not thanks. I've torn my cuticle to the point that I'm bleeding. It's great. That I would like to put to bed this question of whether or not we want as a group, and because I do think that that's something that we need to decide as a group if we want any kind of steering or executive subcommittee. So I'm going to second Marcia's motion to do it and ask that we take a vote.
I don't. Just let me just say this. I think what I would like to suggest is, Sarah, I'd like to have an off-the-line conversation with you, because what just went down is not the way I want our communication to unroll. I don't know how that happened. But, so I'd like to just table that for the next meeting if we could. And it sounds to me like we've got at least 3 solid working groups that people feel comfortable with. At least that much is organized, and if we can report out from that standpoint, it would really be helpful, because then at least we know what the 3 groups are doing.
Sure.
And that's what I would say.
So we have to decide if we're going to vote or not. So Marcia
No,
just
she withdrew.
She withdrew, so we're fine. Okay, great. Yeah, great. I think things look good. I'm 100% willing to. I will not put up, as an English major, a draft that is not ready to be seen. I won't do it. I will give a detailed outline, and as the sections become completed, as I did before, I would release a section. I'm happy to do that. I have been listening to everybody. No one is overlapping. The only overlap that could happen is if Usman brings in some information about people leaving, and that's not even overlapping, because I'm literally studying the economic contributions of our Black community from 1840 to 1900. He's talking about when they left, and I'm talking about putting them on a map. So there are no overlaps, and I have been listening, but I'm going to give you the information you're asking for. I will obviously need to produce the actual draft for you all, and I could do that for June. It's just, it's the end of the semester. I have a lot of students. I have stuff I have to do that requires a lot of reading. So
Sarah, I don't think
put a whole lot of pressure. So for this idea that no one is doing anything, no, that was pressure right now.
It was a tense. I don't want to speak for everybody, but and we do need to wrap up. But I didn't hear Marcia necessarily to be saying that, and I don't hear you. I want to reassure you that we're all just eager to see the work.
I'm sorry. Yes, I totally agree.
And I just want to say that for me, the primary question has to do with, and Bill, apologize, I just jumped in, but it just has to do with a question of efficiency, like whether or not having a different group of people, maybe whatever, one person each talk, and if that's necessary. This group doesn't think it's necessary. It is what it is. That's it. It's just, we talked about it. We don't think it's necessary to have another group of people, one representative from each working group, to meet and talk and say, we don't think it's necessary. That's it.
Bill?
I have one comment on this in general and one comment on... Oh, I'm sorry. I have one comment on this in general, one specific comment. First of all, I thought, Sarah, when you went through the outline, said, whoa, that's pretty impressive. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of distillation of what we've been talking about. I thought it was very impressive. in that regard, I got to tell you that one thing that you said, because it all went by pretty quickly, that I was uncomfortable with was this idea of DNA testing. And and it went by quickly, and before that gets posted, that would really raise my eyebrows if I were looking at it not from this commission. So I would like to talk about that and hear more about what it is about, because the whole idea makes me really nervous.
Well, I do recommend that you look into Henry Louis Gates, which is one of our chief national black intellectuals. He led a whole campaign to encourage African Americans to have DNA testing, so it doesn't come out of the blue. It's debatable. That's what I'm saying. But
Okay.
Like, I don't know where I come from in Africa, Bill. I don't know what part of, so DNA testing, if I wanted it, which I haven't chosen so far, it could place me in an area, and that can be very powerful for an individual.
Okay.
So
I mean that terrific. As a purpose, I understand it. The availability of DNA testing is something that makes me really nervous from a civil liberties point of view. So I just want to note that, yes, you can get a lot of useful, interesting, informative, and helpful information about ancestry from DNA testing. You can also make an awful lot available about your health, about relatives, and information you might not want the government to have someday. So,
well, private companies, I just do it too. But yes, it wouldn't be through the government. It would be them paying for a voucher, giving you a voucher to have it paid for.
Right, as an individual. Okay, that makes me feel more comfortable.
And also, I'm sorry, universities were doing DNA testing with their COVID tests this whole time, all of them. So they got our DNA already. So.
Well, I mean, I think at the end, right, we're going to have a bunch of potential recommendations, and we'll be talking about what we want to, we have consensus about putting forward, so.
And those lists will allow people to nix stuff in meetings, and yes. And finally, we had on our agenda timeline, my suggestion was that our timeline by the city and the mayor is to produce a preliminary report in August, which can be any time in August. It could be the end of August, for example, so we could still have that August meeting. And then our final report is due 6 months after that. The way that the timing is set up is it's produced in August, and then February, right, Black History Month is our final report. So there's a nice timing. But I've heard that there might be some interest in extending that, so we can have that conversation at next meeting. You know you're going to have the draft. You can see where it's at. You can say, yes, Sarah, I think August we can go for it. I'm still saying let's go for it for August. We can still run our surveys. We can still talk to our attorney and look at that and rework that draft, and all that stuff will end up in our final, which means that we should probably push back our final report into next May. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that we try to keep to the initial date, at least for the initial report. And the reason is that report can both clarify and specify what some of the work we still need to do. Right. I think that having something to show to the community reasonably soon, I mean, if we need another month, we get to the end of August and we say we need one more month to finalize this, I would not be deeply concerned about that. But I don't want to extend, because we will fill the time that we give ourselves. So I'd like to, at least for the moment, really try to keep to that August for the preliminary report.
August 30.
That's my birthday.
Yeah.
31.
It will be a birthday present.
I think a preliminary report is great. It's just what we put into it that we need to come to agreement on.
That's fine, yes.
So I'll be in touch with you, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am. It works. Thank you. I'm so happy all of us are all on the same page and we're all feeling positive and happy. Marissa, did you have a final?
I will just put a plug in for that we can discuss further at the next meeting to extend by 1 month because of the summer months, because of people, because August is going to happen and people are going to be on vacation. We're going to lose people in the summer. So I want to make sure that when we get to that final discussion of what we're going to put forward, that that we have as full a group as possible. So that's all. And then I'd move to adjourn.
I would second that.
It seemed one person who wanted to speak, but we're not going to give that person an opportunity to speak in the room.
We're out of time.
Okay, great. So would someone please call roll? Garrick, would you mind?
Yes, we are voting to end. William Newman.
Yes.
Felicia Lundquist.
Yes.
Gary Perry, yes. Jeremy Baker Paquette.
Yes.
Perfect. Marissa Elkins.
Yes.
Marsha Morris.
Yes.
Usman Power Green.
Yes.
Renika Montgomery Tamaclo is absent. Sarah Lynn Patterson.
Yes.
Rachel Naismith.
Yes.
That is everyone. Chair, you are adjourned.